Our class is dedicated in the memory of Bilha Bas Devorah of Avraham. We're very honored here on Tuesday nights when we feature our special guests to have with us Rabbi Moshe Chanowitz, an alum of the Mesivta of Lubavitch, Chabad of Illinois, here Mesivta of Illinois. And look at that beautiful Chabad house. What happened to you? You disappeared. You're back. And he is running Chabad in St. Martin. So let's get started right from the beginning and tell us, look at that beautiful, stunning shul. How long have you been Chabad of St. Martin? Give us a little history.
Yes. Hi, Rabbi Epstein.
Hello.
And honored to be here. It's been a long time since I've been in Chicago. So
it's cold.
Great. Great memories. Yeah, we've been here for 13 years.
Oh boy, so it's your bar mitzvah year. So tell us about what does the Jewish community in St. Martin look like? Is it all tourists? How many people are there? Give us a feel. You know, you were in Chicago when you learned in the Mesivta here, and now you get a sense of what our life is like here. What is it like to be in a place like St. Martin?
From the Windy City, right?
That's us.
That's right. Well, I'll tell you, I'll start off with a story.
Good, love stories.
And this story always reminds me of the Windy City. So I spent 4 years in Chicago, and this was 8th grade, and then 3 years of high school of the Mesivta. Back in the early days. So you know, we Friday is reserved for Miftzayim, going and visiting Jewish people and their offices. And as a 14, 15, 16-year-old teenager, it was not easy, but a great training and great exercise. And the temperature of most of the Jewish people I would bump into was very cold. Talk about Windy City. It was difficult to break through and get a Jewish person to, number one, admit that he was Jewish, and number two, lay tefillin either outside or take us into an office. And then even more so, even more difficult would be to make them, have them join our route by visiting their office on a weekly basis. So after I finished in Chicago high school, I moved on to Los Angeles. The temperature really changed. We set up a new Miftzayim route, a new route on Wilshire, some new offices. Actually, along a little detail we had. We were going to the economic office, Israeli government economic office in I think the Lincoln Towers or something, or not. There was like three buildings on Michigan Avenue we were going to, and they had an office there together with the Israeli embassy, and we would go there every Friday. And and as a result, we went into the Israeli embassy in Los Angeles by way of introduction from the Chicago fellas, and we started that route where it was very difficult to get into the Israeli embassy in Los Angeles at that time. I think it was just after Intifada. It was a difficult period. So the temperature, like I said, was very different, very warm. Jewish people, anyone we would meet, even if they were not so interested, they would either put on tefillin or maybe a hug or some other Jewish expressions. So that was the change of the temperature. And then moving down to St. Martin, we would get a mix because there are all kinds of people that come here. St. Martin is a small island divided by two countries, French and Dutch. And it's literally 37 square miles, so about the size of Manhattan. And there are no bridges, so there's just us and then water. So it's a small place, probably 60, 70,000 people live here full time. A lot of resorts and winter birds. And we do have a small Jewish community here, about 200 full-time residents. There's an American medical school here as well, so a lot of Jewish students that come here for two-year slots. and the tourists. They come in droves. And back in the early days when we moved here, I had some more time to go out and bump into all sorts of people. And this particular story that I want to share was on a day going to the French side and noticing three couples sitting together, and the temperature was very cold. I could tell that they were they did not want to be bombarded by a Chabad rabbi. So I stopped right by and say, "Hey, shalom." They nearly ignored me, but they were not successful. One of them broke and said, "Oh, shalom." So I, continue with the conversation. Where are you guys from? And one of them says, "We're actually from Los Angeles. How did you know we were Jewish?" So I said, "Well, because you guys look the other way." And of course, that
You should have said to them, "How did they know you were Jewish?"
That's the next one. So that's the.
So take us to the beginning. You come to St. Martin. You said 13 years ago. It's not a place like Chicago. People don't move to St. Martin because they're looking for Yiddishkeit. How do you get started? Take us back, if you could, to like those first few days. Who asked you to come there? What's waiting for you? What's going on? How do you get started? And how is it grown that you're still here 13 years later and God willing for many years?
Right. Great question.
I only ask good questions.
When we started out, there were a few young families that were living here at the time. None of them live here still, but they all were interested in Hebrew school for their kids, bar mitzvah lessons, and the first couple of years we had about 10 bar mitzvah boys. Most of them French, some were Israeli, and so that was a good beginning, I should say. The island of St. Martin, since it is partially French and close to Miami, it's a perfect spot for French Jews that are trying to leave France and trying to get to the United States. So there's always someone that's moving here, moving out, moving here, moving out, and as a French person, you can, if you're a professional, a doctor, a lawyer, or anything else, you can just move here and start working. So there's that specific,
So do
detail.
you speak French? I mean, how does that work?
I can get by. Yes, certainly can get by. Spent a year. I did spend a year of shlichus in France, which certainly helped a lot.
So you're in St. Martin. How do you get kosher food? How do you get a moyo? How do you buy a yarmulke? What happens if your tzitzis rip? Where do you get new tzitzis? I mean, is there any basic supplies of Jewish necessity? A baby is born, they need a moyo. What do you do?
It's all right here.
You're a moyo?
There it is. No.
Oh, you froze up on me. Rabbi, you're supposed to be warm, not frozen. Come back to me. I can't tell any more jokes until you.
Comes from Miami, from France. Remember, it is an island, so we have almost no resources locally. Everything comes from the States in terms of non-kosher meat as well. So that's a story of living on an island. Very expensive. Everything's either flown in or shipped in, and whatever comes here doesn't go back. There's no return policy.
Does Amazon deliver to St. Martin?
Amazon does not deliver.
Wow.
Yes, you can freight forwarders that will accept it in Miami and then bring it down on a container, but no.
So you mentioned the tourists. Obviously, that's what people think of vacation. March 2020, COVID comes to the world. How does that just change everything in your life?
So the truth is, we go back a couple of years, 2017. We were used to the whole COVID thing. We weren't. It wasn't a shock because we had a hurricane here 2017, we had Hurricane Irma, and that destroyed the island. And we just actually now starting to recover from that point. We should have recovered in 2020, but because of COVID, it just prolonged the same situation. So the island, the hotels were under construction. Our regular winter birds were not coming as much. The island was not yet its paradise that it should be. So COVID was just a continuation of the same problem. Of course, it was not easy for anyone, and the financial situation.
Where you're standing now that we see, that's your Chabad house, that's your shul?
This is the Chabad house, yes.
It's gorgeous. How do you keep it so beautiful and pristine? I mean, it looks like you just built it this morning. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
How long have you had that? What's its story?
We're still building.
God bless you.
Yes, this building is still in the works. Yeah, the Aron Kodesh just arrived about 3 months ago. So yes, and we started this building in 2016. And
did you build it from scratch, or you took over a pre-existing building?
We built it from scratch. Now, I do want to say the island has a history. And I don't know if you want to go through some of the questions before I go to the history.
Tell us a little bit of the history. Sure, we want to hear about it. Tell us about the history of Jewish life in St. Martin.
So this goes back to the 17th century. This the Dutch West Indies Company had a lot of Jewish shareholders and partners, and these there were Jews that escaped from Spain and started a life in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, and they joined the Dutch West Indies Company, which was exploring the Caribbean at the time. So the stronghold of the Americas were the Spanish. They had Brazil and a bunch of other lands that they already conquered, and the Dutch came in and took over many of the islands. So as we know today, Curacao is a Dutch island. St. Martin is a Dutch island. These were all. St. Martin actually was discovered by Columbus on St. Martin's Day, and that's why it's called St. Martin. So these islands were developed by Dutch and together with the Dutch Jews. These Dutch Jews were very knowledgeable in the agriculture and cultivating the sugar cane they were doing at the time, and some other goodies, tobacco and salt and many other things. So in all of these little Dutch islands, there is an old shul, an old synagogue. Curacao is very famous for its old shul. It's over 300 years old, and the shul is magnificent still. It's got the sand floor. The same thing. There's an island. There's a shul in St. Thomas, also very famous, a couple hundred years old.
You had him on. Rabbi Fetterman. He was on a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, beautiful. Yes, Rabbi Fetterman is our neighbor. About an hour flight.
We had him on a few weeks ago.
Okay, so you know island life already a bit.
Well, we're learning about it. So tell us, we always like to ask this question. How did you specifically wind up in Chabad of St. Martin? What's your story? How'd you wind up in St. Martin? You didn't grow up there, I know that.
Right, yes. I grew up in Monticello. It was freezing. Went to school in Chicago. It was really cold and windy. I said, all right.
I had enough cold weather, huh?
I mean, the answer I hope is the same for everyone. I mean, this is certainly the Rebbe sent us here, and how do we see that clearly? When so St. Martin again it's a unique little shtetl in the middle of nowhere in terms of relatively speaking. When we did move here, so 13 years ago, Rabbi Fetterman was here for three years at the time. So he's 16 years or so, something like that. And so there was Rabbi Zarchi in Puerto Rico, but that's already a big island.
That's Yerushalayim compared to where you are.
Exactly. So small islands was a very new concept. St. Thomas is United States, is America. So there's a lot of American Jews that are connected there already. St. Martin was something new. It was a new experience and a new trial. There were some others that tried, that looked at it before us, and in my point, when I heard St. Martin, I said, "Where is that?" I had no idea where that exists, and so the friend of mine who was, who mentioned St. Martin, I said, where do you start looking? I'm sure today there's so many more that Chabad houses that keep opening, and at that time we thought like, okay, there's nowhere else to go. So I said, okay, where do you start? And this friend of mine said, well, I was just checking out St. Martin. So why are you not going? And it gives me a list of all many different points. And I said, all right, we can look into it. One of the points that he mentioned was there are a lot of French Jews on the island, and he wasn't so afraid of the language, but more of the mentality of the people. He didn't understand French Jews and how they think. And spending a year in France gave me, and I was on shluchos in a town called Vincennes. And this is not like Brunois, which is a Lubavitch yeshiva that's, like moving to Lubavitch, so to say, moving to a small Chabad community. I was in the heart of French, North African Jews that gave me that eye-opening experience. So it was a challenge that I felt can work. So after months and months of thought process and preparation and ideas, we went to the Rebbe, went to the Ohel, and we wrote in this idea that we've looked at the place, we visited, we met some Jewish people. These are our biggest challenges, and this is the question. Is this where the Rebbe wants us to go? And at that particular time, there was a video which still inspires us today. Video playing at the OL. It was playing on the Gem, on the Living Torah weekly segment that week, particularly. And I haven't really seen it much around since then, except when I replay the video. And the Rebbe is talking. It's an early year, black and white. Some of it was still, and the Rebbe is saying, I'm just going to paraphrase, but Rebbe's saying, you're asking why should you go to such a faraway place, which has so few Jews, while you can stay closer to here. And of course, life is much easier as well, but you stay much closer to here, and there's so many Jews to work with. And then the Rebbe concludes and says, well, here you can find many rabbis who could take care of these Jews, but over there, if you don't go, who will? And so to us, that was couldn't get clearer than that.
So let's get started here. So to give us, what's the biggest challenge of being in St. Martin, and what's the most rewarding?
My biggest challenge, by far, would be educating our children. I mean, we.
So how do you do that? What's that like?
Yes. So all the credit goes to the Rebbitzin. My wife is a born homeschool teacher, a born teacher, I should say. Family's, runs a school, and she grew up with it. And she runs a tight-knit homeschool. So right now we have 6 enrolled children, very different ages, from 12 and a half to 2 and a half. So we have, there's like a boot camp style. Every half-hour slot is calculated and used to the exact potential, which makes it difficult to do any other project and program.
Okay, all right. And the most rewarding?
Same.
The
That certainly is
homeschooling is the most rewarding.
most rewarding. Absolutely. But in terms of the shluchos, look, we feel like a lighthouse, and quite literally, besides, I don't know if you can see
It's beautiful.
some of the
Your
the
Chabad house
outside.
is stunning.
There's an island outside, and we literally are a lighthouse in terms of Yiddishkeit, spirituality, to those that live here, of course, but those that visiting, and in the scene of an island. I mean, we are that point, and every day is something else. There's some other call, there's some other need, and very often there's some kind of a emergency need, and not always in a negative connotation, but these emergency needs, when you deal with it and you handle it, and then you say, well, usually it's the fellow new friend who says, like, I can't imagine what would have happened if there was no Chabad here. So that's certainly, the recognition that the Rebbe put a shliach in literally every corner of the world. It's just a living proof that the Rebbe literally cares about every single neshama, every single Jew, no matter where and what situation he's in. And that's fascinating, and I see it all the time.
Rabbi Chanowitz, we want to thank you. Yasher Koach. Thank you for also the little walking tour of your beautiful Chabad house. It's really beautiful, stunning, clean, and neat. Look at that white carpeting. It looks like it's brand new. You should have continued atzlacha. Send us some warm weather from St. Martin. We really thank you for taking the time and sharing with us, Yasher Koach, for all the work you're doing, bringing the Rebbe's message of concern for every Jew, even in a place that seems like it's forgotten, like St. Martin. Remind everybody, tomorrow night, 8:30 for Mimer class. Continue on, and Thursday night, God willing, we'll do some parsha. So thank you all for joining. Thank you, Rabbi Chanowitz. I think you may have frozen on us, but I'll send you the recording, and we'll see you tomorrow night, 8:30 tomorrow night. Good night, good night, good night.
Thanks so much.